In 1950, America felt smaller, quieter, and somehow more alive. Neighborhoods weren't just streets with houses, they were communities. You knew the name of everyone on your block, and if someone knocked on your door, it was probably a neighbor borrowing a ladder, not a delivery.
Welcome to Whispers of Time. Here, we journey through the moments, memories, and stories that history almost forgot. From the quirky to the incredible, every video uncovers a piece of the past that whispers its secrets today. Hit subscribe and join us as we bring history back to life, one story at a time.
A new home cost about $7,400, and it wasn't a tiny box. It came with a yard for the kids to run, hardwood floors that gleamed, and a porch where you could watch the sunset in peace. Today, that money wouldn't even cover the down payment on a small apartment, but back then, it was enough to build a life. Gasoline was 29 cents a gallon in 1955. A $5 bill filled your tank and still left enough change for a Coke and a pack of gum. And you didn't pump it yourself. A smiling attendant did it all, wiping your windshield, topping off the tank, and calling you sir like it meant something. The cars themselves were works of art. The Chevy Bel Air rolled onto streets with its chrome shining, two-tone paint sparkling, and a V8 engine that roared like freedom. Owning one wasn't just transportation, it was a statement, a badge of success and pride. Television began its golden rise. In 1951, the first coast-to-coast live broadcast aired. Families crowded around black and white sets, watching President Truman speak from the White House, sharing a single moment with millions. By 1954, color TVs appeared, an astounding luxury, and when one household got it, the whole neighborhood came over to witness the magic of grass and skies finally in color. Kids didn't have phones or tablets. They had bicycles, wagons, and the world outside their doors. A wagon could be a pirate ship, a secret fort, or a spaceship. All you needed was imagination. The milkman delivered glass bottles before sunrise, the gentle clinking on the porch marking the start of a new day. And every kid either owned a shiny red radio flyer wagon or dreamed of the day they would. Drive-in theaters thrived. Families piled into station wagons, blankets over laps, popcorn in hand, watching double features under the stars. And if you were a teen, maybe she reached over and held your hand, the night air buzzing with possibility. Sunday dinner was sacred. Grandparents, cousins, uncles, aunts, everyone gathered. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, that odd Jell-O mold no one likes but everyone tried anyway. It wasn't about the meal, it was about the togetherness, the laughter, and the stories that grew taller every week. House keys were often left with neighbors when a family went on vacation. No alarms, no cameras, just trust. And when something broke, you didn't throw it away. You fixed it, patched it, or found a new use. Radios, shoes, toasters, nothing went to waste. By the mid-1950s, Elvis Presley arrived, shaking up the airwaves. Teenagers didn't just hear him, they felt him. Every song, every hip shake felt like a new rule in the country was being written. Parents scowled, preachers shook their heads, and the youth discovered a freedom they hadn't known they wanted. School in the 1950s was different. Desks had inkwells, chalkboards were king, and the bell wasn't just a sound, it was a rhythm to life. Teachers commanded respect, and discipline was expected. You stood when called upon, said yes ma'am, and stayed quiet unless spoken to. Homework was handwritten, typewriters were optional, and encyclopedias were the closest thing to the internet. If you needed to know about dinosaurs, faraway countries, or the solar system, the answer lived on a shelf in your living room, page after page of printed knowledge. Lunchtime wasn't about convenience or trendy snacks. School cafeterias served meatloaf, peas, mashed potatoes, and milk in glass bottles. You ate it without complaint, partly because the lunch lady could probably lift a sack of flour with one hand, and partly because that was life. Simple, honest, and nourishing. Technology was beginning to change, but it was slow. The first Waffle House opened in 1955, small, cheap, and open 24 hours. Truckers, early birds, teenagers, anyone could sit at the counter, eat waffles, sip coffee, and feel at home. Telephones were rotary dials on the wall. Long-distance calls were events, and party lines meant neighbors might pick up by accident. Privacy existed, but it was different. Music came from jukeboxes, radios, and live performances. Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Buddy Holly weren't just artists, they were revolutionaries, reshaping the soundtrack of a generation. A single dime could bring a world of sound to your fingertips, and the living room became a stage, a dance floor, a place of imagination. Grocery shopping was personal. Local stores knew your name, your preferences, even the milk you liked. No apps, no barcodes yet. $1 went far. You could leave with a loaf of bread, some milk, and still have change jingling in your pocket. Canned food ruled the pantry. Spam, condensed soup, fruit cocktail. It fed families on a single paycheck. But the process mattered as much as the product. Cooking was art. Chores were exercise, and everyday tasks shaped character. The 1950s were full of firsts. In 1952, Mr. Potato Head became the first toy advertised on television. It was simple, a real potato with plastic pieces, yet it opened a door to modern marketing and toy culture. By 1953, the first successful open-heart surgery using a heart-lung machine changed medicine forever. Progress wasn't just in homes or streets, it was in hospitals, laboratories, and classrooms, reshaping what people believed was possible. Travel was an adventure. The interstate highway system didn't exist until 1956, and road trips required paper maps, spare tires, and patience. Breakdowns were common, and family sandwiches were a necessity. Flying was a formal occasion. Men wore suits, women wore gloves. Stewards greeted you with warm smiles, and the experience felt luxurious, exciting, and almost ceremonial.
Health was approached differently, too. Polio was a serious fear until Jonas Salk's vaccine arrived in 1955. Children cautiously avoided pools during outbreaks, and parents felt both relief and hope as the disease slowly retreated. Meanwhile, houses were cooling themselves without air conditioners. Tall fans, lemonade, and shaded porches were enough to survive a summer. And in homes, technology made life curious, not convenient. Toasters, blenders, and waffle irons were chrome-covered symbols of progress. If they broke, Dad grabbed a screwdriver, a bit of patience, and restored them to life. Nothing was disposable. Everything had value, history, and purpose. Neighborhood life in the 1950s thrived on trust and community. If a family went away for the weekend, neighbors fed the cat, watered the plants, and maybe left a freshly baked pie on the counter. Alarms, cameras, and security systems were almost unheard of. Trust was the currency of daily life. People greeted each other on the street, stopped for a chat, and helped without expecting anything in return. Children's play was unrestricted. No screens, no tablets, no Wi-Fi, just endless hours outdoors. They played stickball in empty lots, raced bicycles along quiet streets, and turned their wagons into forts, pirate ships, or rockets. Scraped knees and sunburned noses were badges of honor, and boredom was never a real problem. Television slowly transformed entertainment. Families gathered to watch I Love Lucy, Father Knows Best, and The Lone Ranger. Black and white screens dominated most homes, and when someone finally got a colored TV, neighbors flocked over just to see the magic unfold. Programs ended with morals. Honesty, kindness, and responsibility weren't just taught in school, they were broadcast into every living room. Drive-in theaters offered a unique experience. Cars parked under the stars, double features playing on giant screens, popcorn in hand. For teenagers, it was the thrill of independence. Maybe a hand was held, a shy smile exchanged, and the night felt electric with possibility. Adults also loved them, gathering for dates or family outings. A sense of adventure and leisure rolled into one. Food culture was both practical and social. TV dinners debuted in 1953, shiny foil trays promising a complete meal with no dishes to wash. At home, roast chicken, Jell-O molds, mashed potatoes, and meatloaf were staples. Coca-Cola still came in thick glass bottles. Vending machines took nickels, and penny candy offered hours of joy. Simple pleasure shaped childhood memories. First bites of ice cream, sticky fingers, and the thrill of choice. Shopping and business were personal. Salesmen visited homes, demonstrating vacuums, encyclopedias, and other modern inventions. A cup of coffee was offered politely, decisions made carefully, and when something was purchased, it became part of the home's daily life. Department stores offered couches and kitchen tools, but the service and interaction were as important as the product. Cars shaped life and freedom. Most families had one vehicle, often a sturdy steel creation with a bench seat wide enough for 3 adults and a dog. Station wagons carried families, dogs, and picnic baskets for weekend outings. Gas stations had attendants, and mechanics were local heroes. Car interiors had no cup holders, airbags, or Bluetooth, just metal, vinyl, and a sense of pride in ownership. Music and culture exploded. Rock and roll emerged with Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Elvis Presley, shaking up airwaves and communities. Parents worried, teenagers thrilled, and dances in living rooms or community halls became rituals. Records were precious, radios prized, and concerts or local performances created shared experiences. Health, progress, and science marched forward. In 1951, the first nuclear power plant lit 4 light bulbs in Idaho, a glimpse into the atomic future. In 1952, the first toy advertised on television captured imaginations. By 1955, polio vaccines brought hope to children, and open-heart surgery redefined medical possibilities. Everyday life had a rhythm. Paperboys delivered newspapers rain or shine. School desks had inkwells, and Sundays were for church, family, and reflection. Mail mattered. Postcards were treasures, and even small trips meant sending a note back home. Life in the 1950s America was slower, simpler, and rich with moments that modern life often forgets.
Holidays and celebrations in the 1950s were simple but unforgettable. Halloween meant homemade costumes, old bed sheets, cardboard, burnt cork for a cowboy beard. Creativity ruled. Children went door to door carrying pillowcases for candy, while parents watched from the windows, smiling at the joy of the night. Christmas involved handmade ornaments, family gatherings, and stockings hung with care. It wasn't about brand names or trends. It was about shared moments and tradition. Sunday dinners were sacred. The whole family gathered, grandparents, cousins, and that one uncle who told the same story every week. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, and Jell-O salad with its infamous cottage cheese were served. It wasn't about the food. It was about connection, conversation, and laughter echoing through the house. Shopping was an experience. Local grocery stores offered familiar faces and personal service. Mom handed over $1, received bread, milk, and butter, and still had jingling change in her pocket. Department stores let you test couches, examine appliances, and sometimes share a coffee with the salesman who lived just down the street. Life had a slower pace, and choices carried weight. Kids had chores that doubled as exercise. Mowing lawns with push mowers, chopping wood, and hauling water weren't complaints. They were routine. You didn't need a gym membership. Daily life kept everyone in shape. Grandpa often had the best calves, despite being 70, and work was just part of character building. Neighborhood barbershops were more than places to get a haircut. They were hubs of conversation, gossip, and camaraderie. Haircuts cost a few dollars, clippers buzzed with energy, and the barber knew everyone's life story. Appointments weren't needed. You simply walked in and joined the rhythm of the community. Entertainment evolved, but personal touch remained. Drive-in theaters, jukeboxes, and radios created communal experiences. Even a small stereo at home became a gathering point, where the latest hits were shared, debated, and danced to. Record players spun vinyl that became the heartbeat of the household. School shaped life in practical ways. Shop class taught welding, woodworking, and engine repair. Graduating students didn't just leave with diplomas, they left with skills to build, fix, and understand the world. These weren't hobbies, they were life skills, ensuring that independence wasn't just a dream, but a reality. Medical and scientific advancements left their mark. The polio vaccine arrived in 1955, easing a nationwide fear. Open-heart surgery, nuclear power, and color television signaled a future full of possibilities. Yet everyday life remained grounded. Milk came in glass bottles, paper boys delivered rain or shine, and chores, errands, and routines defined the rhythm of life. Transportation shaped freedom. Cars were steel, stations were friendly, and long road trips were adventures. Flight was a formal affair. Luggage carefully packed, suits pressed, gloves worn. Every journey felt like an event, not a routine. In the 1950s, trust guided life. Neighbors watched out for each other, kids roamed freely, and the community was the safety net. Keys were left under visors, doors sometimes unlocked, and families relied on the kindness of those around them. There were no apps, alarms, or social media notifications. Life moved slower, decisions carried weight, and every interaction mattered. In short, 1950s America was a mix of progress, simplicity, and human connection. It was a time when small joys mattered, when communities thrived on trust, and when the ordinary moments of life became the memories people cherished forever. By the end of the 1950s, America had changed in countless ways, yet much of the charm and simplicity of earlier years remained. Homes were still filled with laughter. Kitchens still smelled of fresh-baked bread, and neighborhoods still echoed with the sounds of children playing. People worked hard, played hard, and trusted each other in ways that feel rare today. Every innovation, from television to frozen dinners, from color broadcasts to the first credit cards, transformed life, but it didn't replace the human connections that defined the decade. Families gathered around the table, neighbors stopped to chat, and children roamed the streets with freedom, imagination, and scraped knees as their companions. Music, fashion, and entertainment gave teens a voice and a style all their own. Elvis, Chuck Berry, and Little Richard shook up the airwaves, while drive-ins, jukeboxes, and sock hops created memories that would last a lifetime. Yet even with new technology and rising consumerism, The rhythm of life stayed grounded in simple routines, kindness, and shared experiences. The 1950s were a time when moments mattered more than material wealth. It was the era of Sunday dinners, glass milk bottles, hand-cranked ice cream, and paper boys delivering newspapers rain or shine. It was a time when people fixed what broke, celebrated what worked, and treasured the ordinary, because ordinary life was extraordinary in its own way. Looking back now, these forgotten memories remind us that progress is more than gadgets, and gadgets alone. It's about family, community, and the small joys that make life feel meaningful. The decade may feel distant, but its lessons are timeless. Trust your neighbors, value your family, and find joy in simple pleasures. 1950s America was more than a decade. It was a feeling, a pace, and a way of life that seems almost magical in hindsight. From the hum of the station wagon to the buzz of the barber's clippers, from children spinning hula hoops to Sunday church bells, every day carried the weight and wonder of life fully lived. These memories may have faded from the headlines and history books, but they remain alive in the stories we tell, the photographs we cherish, and the lessons we pass on. And that is the true magic of 1950s America, a time both ordinary and extraordinary, simple yet unforgettable, gone but never forgotten.